Ask 5 people how many Americans retire owing nothing, and you get 5 different answers. Every one of them traces back to real research. That is the strange part. Last year, one statistic traveled further than all the others. 68% of retirees carry credit card debt. It came from a real institute, from a real survey of about 3,600 American retirees. And nearly every outlet that repeated it quietly dropped 2 words out of the middle. Those 2 words moved the number by more than 20 points. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve runs the largest household finance survey in the country, and its answer disagrees with both versions. Nobody here is lying. The 3 surveys are counting different people. So I went and read the actual reports. By the end of this, you will know the figure the Federal Reserve publishes, and the age where it flips hard in the other direction. You will also know about a kind of retirement debt most people do not think is possible. That last one comes straight out of Social Security checks. Start with where any honest answer has to come from. The Federal Reserve runs something called the Survey of Consumer Finances. It has been going since 1983, and it lands once every 3 years. Around 13,000 households sit down and account for what they own and what they owe. It is slow, expensive, and the closest thing America has to a real financial census. The catch is the calendar. The most recent published wave is from 2022. The Federal Reserve began the 2025 wave in March of last year, and it has said the summary results will not be out until late this year. So every serious number about retiree debt right now describes 2022. Now look closer, because this is where the question stops being simple. The Employee Benefit Research Institute took that 2022 data and broke it out by age. Craig Copeland published the analysis in August of 2024, and the figures do not behave the way you would expect. Among families headed by someone aged 65 to 74, 64.8% held some kind of debt. Among families headed by someone 75 or older, it was 53.4%. Turn those around and you have your answer. Roughly 1 in 3 households in their late 60s and early 70s owed nothing at all. Among households 75 and over, it was closer to 1 in 2. That is the number. It is also the moment the story gets interesting, because those 2 figures are moving in opposite directions. The 65 to 74 group actually improved. EBRI reports it dropped more than 5 percentage points between 2019 and 2022. The 75 and over group did the reverse. It went from 41.3% holding debt in 2013 to 51.4% in 2019 to 53.4% in 2022. EBRI notes that this is the age band with the largest increase in debt incidence of any group since 1992. Think about who that is. These are people born in the late 1940s or earlier. They are the generation everyone pictures as the debt-free retirees. And they are the one group where the share owing money keeps climbing. AARP put the same trend in dollars in August of 2024. For households headed by someone 75 or over, average debt went from just under $5,000 in 1992 to about $36,000 in 2022. For the 65 to 74 group, it went from around $10,000 to $45,000. The next thing to look at is what is actually sitting in that pile. This is where the second half of the answer lives, and it is not credit cards. Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies has been tracking one line for decades. In 1989, 24% of homeowners aged 65 to 79 were still paying a mortgage. By 2022, that was 41%. The median amount they still owed went from $21,000 to $110,000. That is a rise of more than 400%. The number that stopped me was the oldest group. Among homeowners 80 and over, the share carrying a mortgage went from 3% to 31% across those same years, 3% to 31%. Owning a home outright in your 80s used to be the default. Over one generation, it became the exception. The Joint Center reported that in its Housing America's Older Adults Work and Marketplace and the New York Times both covered it. The reason it matters is simple. A mortgage is a fixed monthly bill that does not care that your paycheck stopped. It is also the single largest reason the debt-free share has been shrinking at the top of the age range. Now back to that statistic from the start, because it deserves a proper look. The Employee Benefit Research Institute ran its spending in retirement survey in the summer of 2024. About 3,600 retirees aged 62 to 75. EBRI published it that November, and its own sentence reads like this. In 2024, 68% of retirees with debt reported having credit card debt outstanding. With debt, those are the two words. 68% of retirees who owe something have a card balance in the mix. That is a completely different claim from 68% of all retirees. But several outlets printed it the second way, comparing it against 40% in 2022 and 43% in 2020. Same survey, same year, and USA Today reported it as more than 2/5 of retirees carrying balances. Both of those can be correct at the same time. 2/5 of everybody and 68% of the ones already carrying something. The denominator moved and the headline did not say so. That is the whole answer, really. The number depends entirely on who gets counted. AARP added the part that actually stings in a national survey released in March of 2025. Among adults 50 and over who carry credit card debt, 47% said they use the cards for basic living expenses they cannot otherwise cover. 17% said they lean on them routinely. That is groceries and utilities, not holidays. And there is one more category, which almost nobody expects to find in a retirement conversation. In January of 2025, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau published a spotlight on Social Security offsets. As of 2023, 2.7 million Americans aged 62 and over were still carrying federal student loans. In 2017, it was 1.7 million. Over the same stretch, the number of borrowers under 62 did not move at all. About 452,000 of those older borrowers were in default and likely collecting Social Security. When a federal student loan defaults, the government can take part of that benefit. In 2001, 6,200 people had benefits collected this way. By 2019, the CFPB counted 192,300. The average taken was $2,232 a year. That is about $186 a month. Here is the detail that says the most. By law, only $750 a month of Social Security income is shielded from that collection. The CFPB notes that this floor has not been adjusted for inflation since 1996. Adjusted to 2024 dollars, it would sit near $1,450. The Government Accountability Office found older defaulters typically had around 15% of their benefit withheld on loans they had often held for decades. The CFPB also counted nearly 90,000 borrowers aged 81 and over still holding federal student loans. There is one last piece, and it is the reason a clean debt-free number can still mislead you. Owing nothing is not the same as paying nothing. The Joint Center reported that in 2023, 34% of households headed by someone 65 or older were cost-burdened, meaning housing took more than 30% of their income. Of the 20 million cost-burdened homeowners in the country, 7.9 million were 65 and over. Property tax, insurance and upkeep do not stop when the mortgage does. So, the honest version. In the most recent Federal Reserve data, about a third of American households in their late 60s and early 70s owed nothing, and just under half of households 75 and over owed nothing. Every scarier or rosier figure you have seen is usually the same data with a different denominator underneath it. Knowing which one you are looking at is the difference between reading a statistic and being handled by one. When the 2025 wave lands later this year, that is the first thing worth checking. I want to hear from you on one thing. When you pictured a debt-free retirement before today, what number did you have in your head? Drop it in the comments and tell me whether it was higher or lower than 1 in 3.